Welcome back to another episode of the Sky Society podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to be inviting Sydney Stark. Welcome, Sydney.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you so much for agreeing to take the time out of your day to come and share your story on the podcast. I am super excited. Sydney has been in so many different areas in marketing, and she's currently at L'Oreal, but has had quite the journey up until this point. And so I'm really excited to dive into all of that. But before I do, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
I'm Sydney, and I am the senior marketing manager on Essie, the nail polish for L'Oreal. And I've been in this role for about 6 months, which I can't believe.
Oh my
And I've been
gosh.
at L'Oreal for about a year and a half.
Yes. And I know you switched recently to the SE team. And where were you at
Mhm.
L'Oreal before then?
So before I was actually in a sales role and I was working with the Target team, so out in Minneapolis on the L'Oreal Paris brand.
Okay. So we're going to get to dive into how you switched from sales to marketing then, aren't we?
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Create a little bit of suspense before we get to that part in your career journey. But I want to kind of go ahead and start at the beginning just because your path is very interesting, just because you've done so many different things in different industries. And so you got your degree in psychology and you went into marketing immediately after into healthcare. Can you tell me a little bit about that role?
Yeah, I think marketing is a really generous way to put it. Yeah, I spent, I had no idea really what I wanted to do. And I think I went to Spelman, which is a historically Black all women's institution, which is really a liberal arts school. And so there was no business major or marketing major per se. And so for me, the best workaround was psychology in order to really just understand people, why people did the things that they did, bought the things that they bought. I think, there's if you're in marketing, there's a lot of psychology behind understanding the consumer. And so I, after graduation, went to, I'm from the DC area originally. And so there was an appeal for me to go back to the advisory board company where I was a healthcare marketing associate. The advisory board is a kind of healthcare consulting firm, pretty big in the healthcare space. But I was really a glorified telemarketer. I was really trying to get business for my marketer and, sign off on contracts of like I was on like a surgical product and like things that just were
Okay.
kind of over my head at the time. Um, and so decided that I wanted to make a pretty drastic pivot. Healthcare is a really interesting space, but it wasn't my calling. It wasn't like what got me out of bed in the morning. And so that's when I made that really kind of drastic pivot into fashion and going to Neiman Marcus.
Yes, I definitely want to touch on that. I want to go back to you having this marketing/sales role because
Yeah.
I have a question. Did you know it was going to be sales when you accepted it, or did you think it was going to be marketing and it ended up being sales?
I It's a really good question. I think I thought it was going to be more of a marketing. I mean, our title was marketing associate, and so you kind of expect that you'll be doing a bit of marketing, and
Marketing, yeah.
that's when and it's changed a little bit, I think. But I think in some of the industries that I was looking at, particularly CPG, to do kind of like that classic marketing, you had to have an MBA, and I did not have that yet. And so it was definitely more sales focused and like cold call outreach and things like that.
Okay. The reason I ask you that, so that same thing happened to me. My first marketing job was not marketing. And this has happened to so many girls that they tell me, it's like,
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I got this marketing job, or anything for this marketing job. And then it ends up being sales just because I feel like companies know that people want this marketing title.
Hmm.
And so they get you in the door. But I don't know if it was the same way with you, but mine ended up being such a good learning experience. I did cold calling and I just got thick skin and I got to
Yeah.
develop the skill that I wouldn't have gotten if I would have just gone straight into marketing.
100%. I mean, I was there for about a year, and there, to your point, yes, you get really thick skin calling
Mhm.
people all day. You also become really great friends with some of the hospital receptionists and things like that, and asking them about their grandkids and all of that. But yeah, you definitely learn a lot. You learn how to be organized. It was my first real like working experience. And so one of the things that I remember really clearly is having to set up, we used to do kind of like these intel briefs for when our marketers went in and presented all of the technology and research to the hospital. And these are like hospital executives, like CEOs, COOs of the hospital or of the whole health system. And so, giving them that intel of like what is important for them to know, what like economically is going on, who are these people, what's their history, what are their passion points, and being able to have, I guess, really developing an appreciation for context also really helps me out a lot, to kind of be able to tell the whole story and being responsible for putting that together.
Yeah. Okay. I'm glad you're sharing that because I know that there's people that are like, I'm in this job that I don't like. It's sales. It's not what I wanted, but
Yeah.
you can still learn
Yeah.
so much from that. So I'm glad
Yeah,
that
of
you're
course.
doing that. Okay. So then you ended up going to Neiman Marcus as an assistant buyer in fashion. So tell me how you were able to make that switch.
It's a good question, and it's not super traditional. My mother is from Dallas, which is where Neiman Marcus is, and grew up with someone who had been at the company for a really long time. And I was trying to kind of figure out what I wanted to do next. And I have always had such an appreciation for fashion and kind of like the more glamorous things, beauty and retail and that sort of thing. And um, uh, my mom's friend was like, you should really try this out. And the more that I looked into the executive development program, which is what all of the class goes through, I was like, this would be so amazing and so awesome. And I got really, really into it. I prepared really aggressively so that I wasn't perceived as just like someone who had an in. I was like, no, you all are gonna like see what I bring to the table and appreciate that and hire me. And it was such a phenomenal experience. It was I was there for just under 3 years, and I was on the coolest business that is like now defunct, I think. But it
Ah,
was kind of go back with me to like 2013, 2016. I think maybe some of your listeners are a little young for that. But when you think of like flash sales, so like Gilt Group and Rue La La and kind of like things of that day, Neiman Marcus
okay.
really wanted a piece of that pie. And so I was buying like for the flash sale business. So like every day on neimanmarcus.com, or a couple of times a week rather, we would like throw stuff up on the site for like 2 or 3 hours at like 50% off. And like that was what I was responsible for buying. So it wasn't necessarily like this season's collection, but it was a really, really cool space, especially when ecom was really, really taking off. And it was such a fun time. I got to buy all categories of business. So it wasn't like just handbags or just shoes. It was like everything. So it was such a great opportunity and something that I really, really enjoy doing.
That's amazing. That sounds so much fun. You just throw up
Yeah.
something on sale for like 50% off and watch everyone like go crazy for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I'm imagining like I don't even know like TV shows like Sex in the City or something where they go to like these like crazy sales to
Yeah,
buy things, and I feel like those don't really
yeah.
exist that much anymore.
No, which is unfortunate, but yeah, like it's definitely it reminds me of like that friend scene where like they're shopping for the wedding dresses
Yes, yes, and they're
with
like
from
blowing the
Monty. Yes,
whistle.
exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
Take
you're like
that with
the
like online.
you're the master like planning all of it, like
Yeah.
watching like
Well, yeah, and it's so fascinating because I think when you buy so many different things, you develop kind of the eye. And so there were things where I was like, there's no way this is gonna sell. And it would like sell out in like 2 hours. And it's like, well, what do I know? And so it was always really fun to kind of do that analysis and assess like what I thought was gonna really work and what I thought wasn't. And that taught me a lot about like negotiations and vendor negotiations and the critical, if you work in marketing, you're going to hear gross margin and profit over and over again. And that was my first exposure to kind of those terms. And so it was a really, really great place to learn, chaotic, but I really enjoyed my time there.
Yeah, it sounds like an incredible experience. And we're just about
Hmm.
to get to the marketing part, but I love how you're kind of accumulating all this diverse skill set, right? Like you went into
Yeah.
sales and you went into this buying position. And so you are becoming a very well-rounded, experienced person instead of, there's different ways to get to where you are now, but I like how yours is
Yeah.
a little all over the place before you ended up in marketing.
Totally. And I mean, I think that it was a little complex back then. I mean, I say back then, like I'm 100, but like I think now there's really an appreciation for kind of being all over the place. I think it's kind
Yeah.
of crazy to expect 22-year-olds to know what they want to do with their life. You know what I mean? So I love having that freedom.
Yeah. And a different perspective to bring that other people can't.
100%.
Okay,
Yeah.
so then you decided to go get your MBA in marketing from Cornell. So what made you decide to go back to that?
Yeah. well, marketing never really left me, and I always wanted kind of that traditional role. And I always thought that, one of the things that was really important was when I was at Neiman Marcus, and for anyone who maybe doesn't know, Neiman Marcus is a luxury retailer. Um, Very expensive price points. I mean, they sell Chanel bags and things like that. The price point is quite high. And I think for me, I came to a point where I was like, this isn't my world and it's not really the world of the people around me. It felt a little bit fairy tale land. And one of the reasons why it was so appealing in the beginning is actually one of the reasons why I decided to walk away in the end. And it was, I wanted to be able to impact everyone. And the thing that I really liked about CPG, which led me to General Mills and L'Oreal, is like, you know, going back to CPG and General Mills, General Mills has Cheerios in their portfolio. And I love that whether you're on welfare or a billionaire, you've probably had Cheerios at some point in your life. And
Yep.
so I really like the mass appeal of people, versus kind of catering to like the 1% of the
Yeah.
1%. So that was really what kind of caused me to reevaluate my priorities and realize that, okay, now is the time to go to school. And also, candidly, luxury retail at the time was kind of going through some challenges, and I felt like I wanted something that was just going to be maybe a little bit more stable, and where I was going to be able to kind of get that experience. So it all just kind of really fell into play and had a lot of support, and both with my family and at Neiman Marcus, and decided it was a great time for me to go to school. And so I went to Cornell and had the time of my life, learned so much, had a really, really great class. Every day on LinkedIn, I see someone from my class doing something really incredible. Um, and it was just a really great experience. I learned so much. I mean, PowerPoint was like a foreign thing to me, really. We didn't use it. And Neiman Marcus and Excel beyond the basic like sorting, like, just kind of like those business 101 skills that like I knew I could pick up, but that I didn't inherently possess. It was a really great opportunity to just learn all of that and meet some really incredible people who are gonna change the world.
Yeah, I think the networking part, at least from what I've heard, is like one of the best benefits of going and getting your MBA, just because you meet the most
Yeah.
amazing people. My question for you is, so you got your MBA a little bit later in your career, and some people go and like immediately get their MBA with like 1 or 2 years of experience. What was like the benefit or pros and cons of getting your MBA after you had about what, like 5 years of experience at this point, maybe?
I had 4, and
Or
so,
okay.
to be honest, I was 25, almost 26 when I started, and I think the average age when I was there was, like, 28. So a lot of
Oh,
people
so you're
actually
younger.
are.
Okay.
Yes, I was a little bit on the younger side, and yes, there are definitely people who go straight through. I think that there's something to be said for having an appreciation. One, business school is only 2 years, and so you only have 1 summer for an internship, and so it's nice to, like, work for a couple of years and understand what it is you do like, don't like, because I think that it can be a little difficult to evaluate that, like I said, when you're, like, 22, 23, and deciding what you're gonna set up. I think, as you get a little bit older, kind of what's important. You've worked, how important is salary, how important is geographical location, like, all of those things um that start to kind of maybe limit you and put you on a certain path become a bit more clear.
And what about the cost piece of your MBA? Because I know MBAs can be really expensive, and that you're
Yeah.
supposed to get this salary increase. Do you feel like the investment, at least for you, was worth it getting your MBA?
Absolutely. So for me, I did get a full tuition scholarship, which was helped a lot, helped substantially.
Mhm.
I won't lie about that. But also, just candidly, my salary more than doubled coming out.
Okay.
So for me, it made a lot of sense.
Yes, even if yeah, okay, even if you would have paid, and the reason I asked this question is those are
Yeah.
ones that I get asked a lot, so it's good to get some insight on that, and especially the
Yeah.
salary piece too, because I feel like that's where you get to see the biggest investment of, if you go and get your MBA, and I'll say I don't always see the salary increase. I'm sure there's also a huge benefit of going to a school like Cornell,
Mhm,
opposed to maybe another place where you do an online education, because I think you also
mhm.
get that networking piece too of being able to go and do that in person, whereas I know a lot of the stuff now is all remote.
Yeah, I mean, I will say coming out, I came out of school, business school in 2018, and it's just like that was amazing. Like I can't imagine going through that experience in like the pandemic. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just a totally different experience from some of the more recent alumni that I talked to. So yes, you're right. There's 100% of financial cost and an opportunity cost. But you just have to kind of evaluate what makes sense for you, and also to your point, the industry is really important, because there are some places where you might not get that same bump. For me it was pretty substantial, and but I know that that wasn't the case for a lot of people, so it really is a case by case basis.
Yeah, all good things to consider if someone right now is
Yeah.
like wondering if that's for them. So thank you for going into that. Okay, so you went, you got your MBA, had a fabulous experience, and then you ended up at General Mills, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about kind of why you ended up there and what you did.
Yes, I ended up at General Mills for the reasons I was saying before. I just loved that General Mills had such a mass appeal. And when I was interviewing there, I had never really experienced people who were so passionate and also so intelligent. I mean, the people who, I think of like our research and development, they have been there for years and they just knew everything inside out. I mean, I worked with some really, really special, incredible people at General Mills. My tenure there, I started off in the natural organic space, was a
Okay.
really which was like a really interesting space compared and a growing space. So I was on a really small brand called Cascadian Farm. And I started off on frozen fruits and frozen vegetables. So like super sexy stuff.
It's very
But it
sexy.
but it taught
My
me
frozen
so much.
carrots and broccoli, love it.
Ex All day, listen, amazing stuff, but it was really interesting to kind of learn about, like, margins and learning about, okay, on the plant line, like, these types of berries clump together and it causes problems and, like, all of that and projecting and understanding launches and understanding retailer demands. I think the thing that I appreciate is there were always concretely specific issues that I was trying to solve. So, for example, on frozen fruits and vegetables, what I was trying to figure out is private label was like kind of king there because it's a really commoditized thing. So, why would we take your Cascadian Farm strawberries over these like frozen Target strawberries that are just as fine, And so it's kind of figuring out your point of differentiation. I pivoted within Cascadian Farm onto their granola bar business. So
Ooh, step up.
very so step up, very interesting. It's interesting because we also own General Mills also owns Nature Valley, which
That was the first thing I thought of when you said granola bars, were those crumbly like granola bars
yes,
that just get all over
yes,
everywhere.
exactly. So it's always fun when your competition is like upstairs. So and the big challenge that I had to face there is how to make yourself stand out in a category that was so saturated. I mean, Cascadian Farm is organic. And for a while that used to be enough. It's like, oh, we're organic. And then it kind of evolved into, okay, so is everyone. What else about you is gonna stand out? Um, and so that was a really interesting experience. I had a bit of a detour. I had a phenomenal mentor during my time, who really just she really pushed me, she really challenged me, and she really believed in me. And there was a time where I had kind of reached a limit on granola bars where I kind of felt like, okay, I've been on this business for almost a year. I think I've kind of done what I can do. And she was on Annie's, which is
Yes.
a kind of kid-friendly brand. And she said, "Oh, come do some stuff for me." She was having some headcount drop off, and she said, "Come help me." And so I did a bunch of various projects for her for a couple of years. I did like for not a couple of years, for a couple of months, excuse me. I did like a relaunch of dressing designs. I tried to launch a cereal that I don't think came to fruition. I went into category expansion. So I got to do a lot of really cool stuff in those couple of months with her. And then my last rotation at General Mills, I was on yogurt. So Yoplait and Go-Gurt and all of those kind of fun products. And I was like in kind of a sales hybrid role of managing the entire yogurt portfolio as it pertains to Walmart, Kroger, and e-com. And I think
Wow.
the fun note that I add there is I started that job January 2020. Um,
COVID.
yeah. So that was a really interesting time to be on a business like
Yeah.
that. So,
Especially in the
uh,
food space, like what was just
yeah.
everything selling out or what was going on?
You know what's interesting? Yes, it was yogurt because it's, refrigerated versus, like, shelf stable, like cereal or something else.
Um,
The growth wasn't as exponential, but it was definitely there, and it was especially from an e-com perspective, I feel like those were places when, like, Instacart and, like, Shipt and all of that really saw some gains because I think we were saying, like, "Okay, are people," and everything was just so up in the air. Are people going to the grocery stores? Are they not? Like, if so, when are they going? And how do we everyone's just trying to figure out how to make the most of things, and including us. So it was a really intense but rewarding and fascinating time.
do you like is grocery shopping even the same for you now, or you just like go down the aisles and be like, I know exactly how how
It
those
is
guys
it,
store and the fridge and how they got the space or
I mean, I did for a while when I was at General Mills, whenever I would go home for the holidays because, like, regionally, grocery stores are so different, and my family lives in Florida, and so they have Publix, and so I would go into a Publix, and my mom would be like, "I'm not going to the store with you anymore," because I would be like, "Ah, that I know who did that," or, "Something's coming soon," and I was just kind of a
drive her
nightmare about
crazy.
it. Yeah, it kind of drove her crazy. I, like, would kind of freak out if I felt like my yogurt was not in the right place at Walmart. Like, it's kind of a bit of, and I'm not any better now. I mean, now you take me into a CVS and I'm looking at an Essie and I'm like, "Okay." It just never gets any better.
That's amazing. Okay, so my one question for you on that would be, I've heard of a lot of people want to enter this space, like working at General Mills is a cool company, like in
Mhm.
the CPG category. What advice would you give to someone who's new in their career and would love to have the role and experience that you had at a company like General Mills?
Yeah, I think, it's funny, I commented on this on my LinkedIn the other day. Just reach out to people and talk to people, but always be sure to add the context. I think that that's really important. General Mills is a company who and I think a lot of companies, L'Oreal and also, we appreciate talent. And I think that if you are someone of talent and to just talk with people. I've had a lot of people reach out to me and ask for 20 minutes of my time. And, I'm certainly not HR, but if there's someone who I think is really talented, I'm more than happy to connect them and, you know, get them on the short list for when something is right and when something makes sense. L'Oreal and General Mills have programs for kind of people straight out of college. L'Oreal or General Mills is called like to be a brand associate, and that is kind of like you become a brand associate, senior brand associate, and then associate brand manager. But if you are an MBA, you go straight into brand manager or associate brand manager rather. And so there are opportunities for people to get in. I don't think that those are as like widely publicized. But and then also General Mills has a really strong presence at conferences, like National Black MBA is a big one, and sometimes uh MBAs don't even you don't even have to be an MBA to go to some of those conferences, and just kind of keeping an ear out if you're really interested, kind of hustle to find those people and find where they are. And try to get time with them and make sure they're known. And also getting in touch if you're in college, talk to your career services agency because someone from your school has probably gone there at some point in time and can probably open a door for you in that way. So it's all about being scrappy and being resourceful and really like leaving no stone unturned.
What is your favorite type of LinkedIn connection message to receive? Like, what's an example of one that you're going to respond to, an example of one that you're not going to respond to?
Well, one that I'm not going to respond to is someone where it's like we have a couple of random connections in common, but there's no context and I've never seen you before. Those I'm absolutely not going to accept. Ones that I will accept is when there's an ask up front of like, "Hi, Sydney, I'm really interested in going to Cornell," or "Hi, Sydney, I'm a current Spelman student and I'm really interested in beauty," or "Hi, Sydney, I'm interested in beauty or General Mills and I'd love to talk for 20 minutes about your time because I love Essie." I think I had someone reach out to me and also just kind of like, doing the quick Google search of like knowing things. I have a horror story, not a horror story, it's not that serious, but I had someone reach out to me once saying like, "Oh, I'm so interested in talking to you about L'Oreal because Mac is my favorite brand." Quick Google search will tell you Mac is owned by Estee Lauder and not L'Oreal, and that's a totally different company. Great company, but not mine.
Yeah.
So, and so you could tell that that was like a very much like copy paste, So,
Yeah, yeah.
just kind of doing that due diligence.
Yeah, and specific to you, it's not like, "Hey, I'm looking for a job and I would love help." It's like, I actually looked at your profile. I'm gonna make a message that's personal to you instead of just like,
Yeah.
yeah, one of those generic templated ones that you're just sending. Or I know there's bots too that just send a bunch.
Well, yeah, and I think, also when it comes to I've had people that like I've had friends of friends reach out and be like, "Can you recommend me for this role?" No, because I don't know you. And I think that's something that people sometimes don't think about the other side is, you know, we are when we recommend people or we refer people, that's kind of our reputations are going out for them
Yeah.
like, and it's something to kind of be mindful of, if someone's going to vouch for you, there needs to be a bit of a relationship. And so you know, building that is really important. I'm more likely to help someone where I can kind of speak to their skills and their personality and say, okay, I think this person would be a good fit versus like, hey, this is my friend so and so. Here's her resume. Can you refer me? Can you refer them to this job?
I am so glad you brought that up. And I even think that I see girls do that where instead of being like, "Hey, can I talk to you about your job?" It's like, "Hey, I just applied. Can you like recommend me or can you refer me?" And
Right.
I would just imagine of like how many like people would possibly ask you of that. And like if it's going to mean something for you to recommend somebody, then you actually want to know who they are and make that
Yeah.
recommendation meaningful, or else everyone's gonna know like, oh yeah, Sydney just refers like whoever. It's not gonna mean anything if you just did
Right.
it for everybody.
Right. Exactly.
Okay, so you ended up leaving General Mills to go work at L'Oreal, which is a dream. So tell me about that career switch for you.
Yeah, it was funny. I had a recruiter, I was it was over like the winter holidays, and so I was in Florida at my parents' house, and I got this LinkedIn request from a recruiter at L'Oreal, and I was like, "And here we go." And I like ran into my dad's home office and I told him, and he was like, "Well, just hear what they have to say." And I had a recruiter say to me, "Don't you think, like, between your CPG experience and your kind of luxury background, don't you think a company like L'Oreal just makes a lot of sense?" And I was like, "You're right, it does." And, it was beauty and kind of fashion in this like luxury space was something that I really enjoyed and thought I would eventually maybe go back to at some point once I got kind of like that mass experience under my belt. Um, and so, working at L'Oreal seems to really check all of those boxes. L'Oreal absolutely is in Walmarts and everything, but they also have some luxury products that are a little higher end, but then they also have like entry level, your teenager's first mascara, So it just felt like a really great fit to me. L'Oreal is the biggest beauty company in the world, and so I knew that there would always be a plethora of opportunities if I proved myself to grow and kind of navigate and try different things. And the people that I spoke with were just really warm. I mean, I fell in love with the people who were my bosses like instantly the first time I talked with them. And so it just kind of all really fell into place, and it was the right time for me personally, and um, just wanting to try something a little different. And I think that was encouraged. And it was hard for me to leave General Mills. I'm not gonna lie. It was like a kind of teary day, my last
Uh,
day. Um, because they're phenomenal people. But I am 100% confident I made the right choice. And I started in a customer marketing role where essentially I was kind of responsible for all of the like in-store and online activations for the brand L'Oreal Paris as it pertains to Target. So kind of anything that you saw like L'Oreal Paris and Target centric, like I had a really heavy hand in that. And It was an interesting role. I think being in marketing, and I think as you start to research some of the marketing firms, there are some that really put a heavy emphasis and priority on getting some sales experience and being out in the field. In fact, I won't name companies because I think it's probably evolved since I was recruiting, but some require it like as a stint in like rotational programs. And I actually think it's a really good, it taught me a lot about, well, it was a great experience for me being because I was a buyer and then I was kind of selling in a way. And so
Mhm.
that knowledge really helped me work on the field team and sitting with buyers. I was like, they're not going to like this. I know why. And then, and then also saying like, oh, they have to take this. It's going to be so great. They don't see it yet,
Yeah.
um, and so it was a really interesting, I was there for about 13 months. It was like a really interesting 13 months. Lot of networking happened. You asked about the transition from kind of sales to marketing and
But
from
before you move on to
yeah,
that,
yeah,
real quick,
yeah.
I want to ask you because you left a marketing role to go into a sales role. Were you worried at all that like before we even get to you going back into marketing, like what was that thought
Mm.
process for you? Was it more just about being able to work with L'Oreal? Was it more that you knew you were going to learn, or kind of what was going on in your head then?
Kind of a bit of both, like all of the above. I mean, I said, I'm never going to regret having L'Oreal on my resume, even if this is the worst job that I've ever had. And thankfully it was nowhere near the case. But so that was kind of my first thought. And also, like I said, I knew that a lot of CPGs really respected sales experience. And
Hmm.
I really appreciated that recruiters see when the L'Oreal recruiters and HR, when talking to me, always seemed to know what I was coming back to. It was always going to be, we're going to bring you in this role and then ultimately you'll do marketing, you'll kind of go back to marketing and everything. And that required a New York relocation and all of that kind of stuff. And so I was really comfortable and really excited to do a sales role because I knew it was only going to help me.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for touching on that because I
Yeah.
think I think what's cool about your journey too is that you kind of move fluidly between both of them throughout like your entire journey. And the other thing
Mhm.
I wanted to say really quickly was that you ended up being a perfect fit for this role because of experiences that you didn't even know would likely complement each other until this recruiter pointed it out. And so I also think it's really good to keep in mind for someone who's like, oh my gosh, my dream job is, L'Oreal or, whatever beauty brand or whatever industry that you want to get into is that,
Yeah.
you can accumulate these diverse experiences that aren't in beauty, like General Mills and Neiman Marcus, like, and then they can come together to create a perfect match that make you a really good fit for something that you may not have seen on your own.
Yeah, it's a real blessing that my career kind of has made a lot of like when you look back, it's like, oh, these things to your point have like flowed really nicely. But
Mhm.
when you're in it, it did not feel
It
like that
seems
at
like
all.
chaos.
I was like, what am I doing? So I'm really blessed that it's just kind of all worked out. So yeah.
Yeah, 2020 or hindsight, everything looking back on it, it's like, of course that all made sense. But like when you're in it,
Exactly.
it feels really scary. And so I just think it's comforting to know is like if you do feel scared, you do feel like is like I'm doing a sales job now. I want to be in marketing. Like, is this all going to work out? Is that like it
Mhm.
absolutely can and will. It just may
Yes,
take a little bit of time.
absolutely. And it's
Okay.
not forever,
Yes.
jobs now like rotate, like if someone wants you to do a rotation and you're like, I'm not feeling that, like it's not forever. So just looking for the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes. And now you're at the end of the tunnel. So you're senior marketing manager at L'Oreal. Tell me a little bit about that
Mhm.
transition and what your role is like now.
Yeah, so I had started when I was in the customer marketing role, and one of the things that was really important to me because I was in Minneapolis for a company that had its U.S. headquarters in New York. It was really important to me that people knew who I was, and so I networked internally really hard, which led to people asking me, "Well, what do you want to do?" And it did help that I had an MBA, and it helped that I had come from a place like General Mills, which has a really strong reputation for marketing. And so when I said, "Hey, I think I want to go back to marketing," it wasn't kind of like a wait, really? It was kind of like a yeah, we see that. Okay. So I had a lot of support with that, and people were, and every time I met or had a virtual coffee chat with someone, they opened the door to like 10 other people. I mean, honestly, and that's why I think it's so important to network, because I would not have been able to do it at all on my own.
Let
Um,
me stick on that
and
piece for one
yeah.
second, because that's so important. You meant you networked internally. Can you tell
Oh
like
yeah.
me like what that looked like? What were you asking? What were you doing to network internally?
Oh yeah. So honestly, it's just finding people, and people's names start to come up, and if you are a part of an affinity group, I was in the black like affinity group and the women affinity group, and so just kind of like knowing who kind of like some of the head hitters are. I remember talking with like the associate head of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I was like, I think this is what I want to do. I don't know a ton of people. I just got here a couple of months ago. And I think later that day, she sent an email out to 15, 20 people on my behalf of like, hey, here's
Wow.
someone, like, can you talk to her? This is a bit about her background. And everyone was like, yes, of course. And so I think just having people who are willing to kind of be your champions, and kind of, I'm sure you've talked about like the differences between like mentors and sponsors and things like that, and making sure you're going to have people who know how to like vouch for you, and help you navigate it, as well as navigate the organization. And I just had a lot of people who were really willing to do that for me. And I think it's because I was just really good about building an authentic relationship. There's some people that I only spoke to once because I didn't feel as strong of a connection. And then there are some people where I have a standing coffee chat with them every other month because I love them and I think there's a lot to learn from them, and I just really respect them as humans. So um it's important. Networking internally is so critical and so key. I would not have been able to jump and be relocated to New York and be on this Essie team had I not done that.
Yes, yes. And what you mentioned there too was vocalizing what you wanted and saying that a lot. I've had a lot of guests talk about that where if you like you want to go into marketing, but you just keep it in your head, like how are you supposed to expect anyone to champion that for
Mhm,
you? And so just like
mhm.
telling people, and like you didn't ask that girl to send an email to 15 people, but you did vocalize what you wanted and she stepped in to help you, which is amazing.
Yeah, and then also being able to take in the value of what you're doing now. I think I was able to say, like, these are the things that I'm currently doing as a customer marketer. These are the things that I did at General Mills, and here's how I want to take the past like 2, 3 years of my life and put them into a role at L'Oreal. And this is why, like, you need me as a marketer in your organization. So that was helpful, I think, as well.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So go back into that transition. So you're networking internally and then yeah, keep going on your story.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm just networking internally, and I think and everyone was kind of like, okay, let's kind of figure it out. And after I hit kind of like 1 full year in the role was when HR was like, okay, now it's time to like not stop networking, but now it's time to kind of like actively look at roles and actively start to apply, because I had started to talk to, understanding like what kind of product types I was interested in, and all of those types of things, and also knowing kind of what type of team I wanted to be on and the learnings that I wanted, because marketing at L'Oreal versus marketing at General Mills, while there are a lot of similarities fundamentally, they are very different. They're pretty different worlds. And so I wanted a place where I was going to be able to have that opportunity to learn. Um, and someone in HR reached out and they were like, "Hey, what about Essie?" And I was like, "Ooh, okay." I like already had an entire like Tupperware container just full
Like
of
me too. I
Essie nail
have one
polish,
literally in
and
like the
so
cabinet over there of Essie nail
yeah,
polish.
exactly. Exactly. And I literally showed it to my boss in the interview. I was like, if you don't think I'm genuine, like look at this. And she laughed so hard. I think that's what cemented it. No, I'm kidding. But she really but I and that just kind of happened, and it just really worked out. And it's been 6 months, and I have this is one of the first times where I can truly say I love my job, and I love the people I work with, and I love the work that I'm doing. I think it's always been kind of like a fight of like the people are amazing, but like I'm not super passionate about what we're talking about. And this is a time where I feel like it's all just kind of come together. I work for some really phenomenally smart women, and I work with some really, really incredible people who are just like movers and shakers in their own right. And I've learned so much, and there's so much still to learn.
That's beautiful. All of those things have aligned. That's really, really hard to do
Yeah.
because yeah, you're totally right. Sometimes you have a couple of the pieces and you hang on to the job because those things are great. And it's hard
Yeah.
to leave to figure out how to get all of them to fit together. So it's really beautiful that you're able to find them all.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
And what does a day in your like, I know every day is different, but like a rough
Oh, yeah.
outline of like what it looks like to be, a marketing manager at L'Oreal for Essie.
Yeah. What does it look like? I'm trying to think of even like what we did today. Well, there's like a lot of forecasting. The thing that you probably know about Essie, if you ever walk into a store, is there are a lot of SKUs. And so
Yes.
I manage the kind of core business because Essie has a couple of different franchises under their belt, and I manage the core business. And so sometimes that pertains to like forecasting financially, like what we think that business, particular businesses are going to do within particular retailers. It's also about looking at some of the new collections coming up and trying to estimate how we think those will perform. It's looking at the market, the like press on nails and things like that have really changed the nail market as a whole. And so just understanding that and how and like what Essie's role within all of that has been really critical. And I think also just understanding like the media, which is new for me, and understand, and also like the margins and understanding like different shades and things like that. It's just been it's intense, but it's a lot of fun.
Yes, I could definitely see how that can relate a lot back to like your
Yeah.
experience at General Mills of just having these different
Yeah.
products that you just have to learn and understand so much about because they're so niche that it's not like you can come in with a bunch of knowledge
Yeah.
about nail polish and press on nails and all those things.
Yeah, I also am responsible for putting together like the in-store assortment. So when you walk into like a Target or something and you see like the SE, like, and you see kind of like the SE wall that we call it, I'm kind of responsible for the way that that orders up, and how it changes in the season. So that can also be very time consuming depending on the time of year. But like I said, I love it. It's such a colorful world, and so it makes it bright. Like,
Oh,
even
yeah.
looking at, like even looking at our PowerPoint slides is really fun because 'cause they're all just so beautiful because there's just splashes of color everywhere. It's just like blue, yellow, green, purple, everything. So, it's been a really great time.
That's amazing. It sounds like such a fun job. And your career journey in general, I loved going through everything that you've done because and like we said, looking back on it, it makes sense how all of those building blocks like came to create this awesome role. And I'm sure going to keep growing and continuing to evolve. And those three pieces that you have right now, I'm sure are going to keep changing as you keep growing.
Yeah.
So I loved going through all of that. My last question for you, and I think one of the other threads that you lightly touched on was diversity and inclusion. So you mentioned that you went to a college that was predominantly for Black students. And then you had also mentioned that you're a part of an inclusion group for Black employees at your current company. Can
Mhm.
you tell me for women of color who are on the job hunt or who are new in their career, what advice would you give them?
Um, I think the advice that I would give probably is the same for anyone. I think the work that you're doing now is valuable. I have a mentee right now that I'm working with who went to my alma mater, and she's really eager to get into a marketing place, and she's doing something functionally different. And I'm like, listen, there's value. Like, yes, we'll get you there, but there's a lot of value in what you're doing right now. It just all depends on how you wrap it up and sell yourself. Um, and I just think networking, and I think it's important to find. And by the way, a lot of my mentors and a lot of my sponsors in my career historically have not always looked like me. I think that sometimes there's this idea that, if you are a young Black woman entering the workforce, that your mentor or your sponsor or your kind of champion needs to also be a Black woman. And I think that that can be because there aren't a ton of Black people in like the executive level, I think that that can be, which is a challenge in and of itself, it can be a little limiting. And so, you know, you just have to kind of figure out, try different shoes on and see what fits, find out kind of who's willing to help you. I think, um, and be open to that. And those are probably the two biggest pieces. Value where you are now, know what you're bringing to the table, and stepping outside of your comfort zone as it pertains to networking.
That's beautiful. That's perfect. Perfect bow to an already incredible episode. So thank you so much, Sydney, for coming on and sharing your story. It was so fun diving into all of that.
Thank
And yeah, thank you
you.
again for taking the time to come on the podcast.
Thanks for having me. This is so fun.